Well, hello, and a very, very warm welcome to this special webinar, which I'm delighted to be running with ICA, the International Compliance Association. My name's Simon Gray, and along with ICA, we've been planning this webinar for some time now, and it's great to see so many people signed up and ready to get going. I think we had about 135, 136 registrations, and quite a few people are already in the room ready to get started. But I'm just going to wait for a few more people to join, just to make sure everyone I'm expecting has turned up. So if you want to take a quick moment to find the question box, there's a question box on your control panel. This is your opportunity to communicate with me directly. If you'd like to find that now, and just let me know where you're from in the world, and if you'd like to, what you're hoping to get from this personal branding webinar. Also means that if you're typing in the question box, I know that you can hear me and you can see my screen. So this is always a tentative moment while I wait for somebody to do that. So hopefully people can hear me, people can see me. Hopefully you can find the question box. So just let me know where you're from and what you're hoping to get from the session. So just type in there if you would. I'm going to assume people can hear and see me. Let me just double check on that. Okay, yeah, I think most people can. So yeah, people saying they're in the room and ready to get started. So we'll get started then, and I think probably here we go, a bit of a time delay, I think. So let me welcome a few people and see where you're from. So Thasara from Sri Lanka, Charlotte from Derby, Diane from the UK, Petagay from the Caribbean. Wow, this is a truly international event. Florence from Luxembourg. Olu from Essex, Chris from London. Wow, and a lot more people. You had me nervous there for a while. There's always a slight time delay with what you're hearing and what I'm seeing. So we'll just make a couple of allowances for that as we move through. A fefew more people. Manisha from the UK, Sumaya from Bahrain, Pablo from Spain. Wow, fantastic. A very, very, very warm welcome to you. I'm absolutely thrilled. We've got so many people from all over the world. And I'm going to promise that we're going to have a really, really good session where I'm going to explain a lot about personal branding and what it is you need to think about. So for about the next 45 minutes, I'm going to be speaking. I'm going to explain why you need to think about building a personal brand. And this is a personal brand to advance your career and your life. And whether you're looking to move within your current organization or in the external job market, the advice that I'm going to share works and is something I've personally used to build my own profile and business. And on this note, I'm going to share with you a personal real life example later. And funnily enough, just to tell you another quick story. I like stories, as you'll see as we go through. Communicating my personal brand online is what initially caught the attention of ICA. And this led to a conversation with the CEO and an invitation to host this webinar. I think the CEO had seen some of my posts on LinkedIn. I think he'd got a hold of my book, which I'll talk about in a moment. And contacted me and said, would you like to host a webinar? And I was absolutely delighted to do that. So you see already that personal branding is powerful. And on this webinar, we're going to cover three key things. The first thing is why you need a personal brand. And it's my belief, whatever profession, whatever you do, whatever your level nowadays, you need a personal brand. And the second thing we're going to talk about is how to build your personal brand. So we're going to talk about why you need it, then how to build it. And then I'm going to share with you some principles and tools to build your brand. And I'm going to specifically talk about LinkedIn. And what I'll do, I'll actually pull up my LinkedIn profile. Hopefully some of you are connected to me already. I'll give you an opportunity to do that in a moment. I'll pull up my LinkedIn profile and show you how I do it, which will show you how to do it for yourself. And I really like the Q&A part at the end, the questions at the end, because I'm assuming there's certain stuff you need to know or want to know. We're going to allow for about 15-20 minutes at the end, whereby I'd love you to ask me some questions, whatever it is, anything to do with executive job search, anything to do with online stuff, building a personal brand. So please have a think about the questions you might want to ask me. There's two ways you can do that. You can ask the questions as you go. Just so we keep to time, I'll probably deal with the questions at the end. But at the end, I'll prompt you and I'll say, look, anyone got any questions? So please give me some questions, and I'll gladly answer those questions at the end. That's always some of the it's always probably it's the most interactive part of the session, of course, but also it's often the most insightful part of the session because I'm answering the questions that you want answering. So I always think it's important to do a very, very quick introduction at the start because, after all, why should you listen to me over anyone else? And what gives me the authority to communicate my message and what I'll share with you on this webinar this evening. And some of you may be hearing from me for the very first time, and some of you may have read, listened to, or watched the content I create and publish online on a fairly regular basis. And I generally do this through LinkedIn and also through my website, careercodex.com. Very quickly, I trained as a chartered accountant, and then I fell into the recruitment industry, as so many people do. And I spent about 10 years, about a decade of my life in the recruitment sector, first as a consultant, and then as the founder and owner of my own recruitment firm. But after 10 years in the industry, to be honest, something was missing. And I started to become disillusioned. And this is when I made the tough decision to leave my own company, the company I'd set up, to set up another business on my own Career Codex. And looking back, the missing piece of the jigsaw for me really was that after 10 years in the industry, I had knowledge. Knowledge I knew would empower people like you to find career success. But knowledge, it was difficult for me to share while still in the recruitment profession. I'm the author of 3 books, including Super Secrets of Successful Executive Job Search, which you can see on the screen on the right. And on more than one occasion, I'm very proud to say that this has been the best-selling book in the executive job search space on Amazon and regularly receives 5-star reviews. And I mentioned LinkedIn already. You'll see my LinkedIn URL there. You can't click it, but you can type Simon Gray ACA into LinkedIn search bar. You'll pull up my profile, and I'd be delighted to connect with you. As I'll show you later, I've got about 9,500 first-tier connections. Connectivity on LinkedIn is important. So if you do decide to connect to me on LinkedIn, immediately you will have 9,500 second-tier connections, which will increase your reach and visibility on the platform. And I'll talk about that in a moment in a bit more detail. Okay, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I do. And I developed what I call a system for success. This is my Career Codex methodology, and it's a system for executive career and job search success. And career and job search success is much more than a CV or resume. And in my opinion and experience, comprises environment, first off, how the executive job market really works. You have to understand that. Mindset and psychology, the psychology of success. And psychology is the most important thing which determines success or failure in the executive job market. Career planning, getting clear on where you're headed, and then how to proactively run your own recruitment process every step of the way. And this is process. And through Career Codex, I now coach senior executives from across the world to define, find, and secure the executive position they really want, the one they really want, not just the one they've happened to see advertised or had put in front of them by an executive search firm. And that's important. I think there are a few of my clients or former clients on the call. So a warm welcome to you. You'll have heard some of this before, but I coach people from across the world. So it's great to see we have an international audience. And of course, through the power of technology, you can absolutely do that. We wouldn't have been able to do this some years ago now, but through the power of the GoToWebinar platform, we're able to do that right now. And a big part of what I teach and what I show people how to do is how to build a personal brand to stand out, which of course is the subject of this webinar. So I asked you to think about a couple of things in the webinar confirmation email, and the principal thing I asked you to do was to do a Google search of your name and location to see what comes up. So if you did that, just let me know you did that. And if you want to share with me what came up, whether you were surprised, then do that. If you pop that in the question box now, that would be great, and we'll get some feedback. Bit of a time delay, as we know, so I'll just wait for a few comments to come through. It's quite surprising sometimes when you put your name and location into a Google search engine, because you don't necessarily know what's out there. What content may be out there that mentions you. I do this on a fairly regular basis, and if you Google my name and my location in the UK, then you'll see quite a lot of content does pop up, and I keep a conscious eye on this because it's important, because it's what's speaking about me when I'm not necessarily in the room, and I need to know what's out there. So a few people saying, Roberto said, did a Google search, shows a previous post. I presume that's some content you've created. A few other people are saying not a lot came up. Well, that's okay. You're in the right place, because I'm going to show you how to make sure stuff does come up. A couple of other people are saying that they've written some posts previously. John's saying he's written a post that pops up. People's LinkedIn profiles popped up. Yep, LinkedIn is important. Phil says did a search, but not a lot there. Susan says industry boards I am on. Okay, presumably job search boards. Daniel, very honest answer, nothing. Okay, so we're going to try and change all of that in what I'm going to share with you on this webinar, because you see what comes up or doesn't come up in the case of some of you is a big clue as to what message is being communicated to the world about you, who you are, what you do, and most importantly, what you stand for. It's very, very important to fill that space, and I'm going to explain why it's so important now. And it's important because more and more people nowadays are spending an increasing amount of time doing online research. I do this all the time before ever making a decision to do business with you and the organization you represent, or making a decision to promote or hire you. I do this as a matter of course. Before I decide to hire anyone, engage in business with anyone, I Google their name, I Google their location, and I definitely have a look at them on LinkedIn. And your personal brand, the definition of your personal brand is really what others say about you when you're not there. And this is often left to what I call an unconscious shortcut as to what springs to mind. And it's what springs to mind really when people hear your name, company you work for, whatever it might be. And it's really a shortcut, an unconscious shortcut that they don't really think about how they feel when they hear your name. And just take a moment to think about some of the brands out there that are important to you. We all identify with certain brands. Think about some of the brands that are important to you and the words or feelings that spring to mind when you hear the name of the brand or see the logo. And if you'd like to share that with me in the question box now, that would be great. A lot more comments coming in from the Google search actually, so thank you for that. So think about some of the brands that you identify with, and perhaps let me know why you identify with those brands. And I'll give you my example. I'm a big Apple fan, and for as long as I can remember, I've only driven a Mercedes. So Mercedes-Benz is the brand of vehicle that I drive. And when I'm thinking about buying a new computer or changing car, I immediately think of these brands. But why? Why do I think of these brands? Well, because they both work hard to proactively influence my thoughts and feelings about them, including quality, messages of quality, reliability, and trust. And if you think about what some of the brands are doing nowadays, if you think about the car industry, when you see car adverts, they don't necessarily show you, all the bells and whistles, what the size of the engine is, the acceleration, and this, that, and the other. What they're communicating is more of a feeling. It's more of an emotional engagement as of what it means to drive a Mercedes or a BMW or whatever other brand. It's that kind of feeling to create this tribe mentality of either you're on the Mercedes team, the BMW team, or on the Apple team, or perhaps the Microsoft team. Okay, so Ronald said brand Geico Insurance, not one I've come across. Lots of advertisements out there in the USA. Okay, I'm going to talk about marketing shortly. And there's a difference between advertisements and there's something different, which is something called inbound marketing, which I'll come on to shortly. And it's really inbound marketing that the personal branding thing we're talking about. That's really what it's all about. So thinking about some of these brands, your personal brand is no different to the recognized brands you already identify with. And the only difference is that unlike some of the brands you identify with, you may not yet be transmitting your message. And your personal brand is really created in two ways. Firstly, it's how others react to you and who they perceive you are. So it's a reaction to what people think about you. It's how they react to you. And secondly, and this is more important, it's what you proactively communicate to the world to influence people's perceptions. So if you don't have an online personal brand at the moment, the reaction people may have is one of indifference. They don't necessarily know you exist. They can't do any due diligence about you. That doesn't help you necessarily to build a relationship with them. But the second way you can create your personal brand is to fill that void and to proactively communicate what you want to communicate out there to influence people's perceptions. And we all have control of that. We just have to take a step to make sure that we're doing that. And if you're not proactively taking control of your message to the world, then there's a chance that the narrative out there and individuals' thoughts about you and what you are may not be ideally what you want them to be. And who you say you are and what you stand for works on a number of levels. And the first level it works at is subconsciously. Because if you say you're something and you position yourself as something, subconsciously that has a very, very powerful effect because it directs you to become the person you want to be. I position myself in a certain way, face to face and online, and you actually grow into that person because if you've not communicated a personal brand before, you're going to put something out there and you may grow into that personal brand, but subconsciously it has a really, really important impact on you and your own personal growth. And secondly, with a clear message communicated through your personal brand, you'll attract others who can help you get to where you want to get to. And I shared the story at the start. The CEO of ICA, I attracted him. He read some of my content. He invited me to do this webinar, and suddenly I've got my message out to 135 people that or thereabouts that I didn't necessarily know before. So I'm attracting the right people. I'm speaking in London tomorrow at ICAW headquarters at the CFO conference, and again, I've attracted that relationship through the content that I create. So you will attract people, the right kind of people, if your message is clear and resonates with them. And this is all to do with your personal brand. And then thirdly, proactively communicating your message consistently serves to change people's existing perceptions. I'm going to say that again. I'm going to say it slowly again. Proactively communicating your message consistently serves to change people's existing perceptions or fills the void of stuff that's not there. And it fills it with what you want. And there's a very important word there, consistently, which I'm going to come back to later. And this is why investing time to understand and take control of your personal brand is so important to your future and career success. So how do you build a personal brand? Well, it's a great question, and one I'm going to help to answer now. To build your personal brand, you have to decide on, know, and understand, firstly, your audience. You can see the audience there on the left. You have to know who you're talking to and where they're based. You can't talk to everybody. You've got to know who your audience is. I remember when I started my business, my recruitment company, the temptation then starting a business was to try and talk to everybody. We needed business. But that's not a strategy for success. You have to know who you're talking to. You have to identify your niche because then you can craft your message accordingly. And in your current organization, your audience is likely to be senior decision makers in the company who you may or may not yet know. And if you work for a big organization, the chances are you may not know everybody that can help your rise in the organization. So you've got to know who you're targeting. And if you're active in the executive job markets, it's target employers within a particular niche or sector. And getting clear on where you're headed is critical to your success, because if you don't know where you're going, getting there is always a matter of chance. You have to decide on what I call your destination. And this is the type of organization and position you want and where it's based, coupled with the time it will take you to get there. So it's the type of organization, the type of role, where it's based, and this coupled with the time it will take you to get there. And this really is career planning. Which in my experience is something many people, particularly at the executive level, don't make time to do. Instead, they react to what's out there instead of proactively going after the future that they really want. And if this has been your experience, it's a common experience. When you come onto the job market, the executive job market, the natural step is to look out there and see what's advertised and to position yourself in line with those advertised positions. But that's not necessarily the best strategy. And in fact, going proactively after what you want reveals more opportunities. And of course, you communicate your message with more passion because it's what you want. It gets your message gets your message heard. So once you know your audience, the next step is to craft your message. And your message, as I explained a moment ago, has got to be clear, concise, and resonate with your target audience to gain their attention. And it's about positioning yourself to a certain extent as the go-to person in your industry sector. It's also about getting off the fence. You've got to get off the fence. Get off the fence and communicate not only your expertise, but also your opinion. And that's a really important point. When you're doing some of the personal branding stuff I'm going to talk about in a moment, you've got to have an opinion. Yeah, you've got to have an opinion. And as soon as you have an opinion, people take notice. They may not agree with you. They may disagree with you. It may really resonate with them. But if you have an opinion, you'll attract the right people. There's nothing worse than communicating sort of bland content where you haven't given an opinion on it. People want to know what you stand for. That goes back to what I said earlier. They want to know who you are and what you stand for. And, sometimes people will disagree, but that's okay because you're not trying to reach everybody in the world. You're trying to reach and resonate with a specific type of individual, perhaps in a specific sector, particular geography. And that means you've got to have an opinion. And to get promoted internally or to make a move externally, you've got to stand out. And this starts with building your personal brand. And I want to talk a little bit about marketing. Marketing is something I'm very passionate about. We're all in the marketing business nowadays, I believe. Whether you like it or not, we're all in the marketing game. And if you think about what marketing used to be about communicating a sales message to the biggest audience possible. And think here about TV advertising, which is essentially a general message to a very wide audience. Now, I know, of course, there is some targeting determined by the channel and the time the advert airs, but it's still a very broad brush approach and not to mention very expensive. And let's be honest, does anyone actually take notice of TV adverts anymore? Personally, I don't. I go and make a drink, or if I've recorded something, I'll just fast forward. So would you agree? Let me know. Let me know in the question box. Do you take notice of TV adverts anymore? I suspect, quite a lot of you don't. And if you do, it's by chance. Quite a few people now are saying, no, not really. No, I fast forward as well. Yeah, okay. So people don't take notice anymore. And TV advertising is really something called outbound marketing. And one of the comments earlier was about advertising. This is pushing a message out in front of an audience, perhaps a general audience. And TV advertising is outbound marketing at its best, illustrated by the aircraft on the left on the screen. But in reality, outbound marketing is marketing that, in my opinion, is not that great. It's in fact marketing, in my opinion, probably at its worst. Because with more and more sales messages bombarding us from every angle at every opportunity nowadays, as human beings, for our own sanity, we've learnt to filter this excessive noise out, and our attention spans are much, much lower than they were a few years back. We've got adverts coming at us from Facebook, from LinkedIn, from all over the place. So we've had to filter this noise out, which means we are actually paying less attention for our own sanity's sake. And most people don't like selling. And speaking from personal experience, when it comes to being sold to, people like being sold to even less. People don't like selling, and people don't like being sold to either. And as consumers now, we use the internet to research our purchases well in advance, and we're more informed consumers than we ever have been. And we know what we want now, and we know where to get it. And the buying decision has been done to a large, to all intents and purposes, prior to the actual transaction. And jumping back to the car industry, if you think about, back in the day, if you wanted to buy a car, you've got to go to the dealership to talk to the dealer to find out what you were going to buy. But nowadays you can research all this stuff online. So if you've bought a car recently or another, high value transaction, probably when you walked into the shop or the dealership, you knew quite a lot about what it was you were going to buy. And really you just had to, sign on the dotted line. Sometimes in my experience now, you actually know more than the people trying to sell this stuff to you. So, it's important now. The internet is important, what's on the internet, and how these brands are communicating with us, because we're all searching online, and we tend to get influenced by the brands that don't just advertise to us, as I said earlier, but build a relationship with us along the way. And building a relationship really means helping us to alleviate a problem or aspire to a solution, to alleviate a problem or aspire to a solution. And we tend to identify with the brands that connect with us emotionally. And modern marketing has got absolutely nothing to do with selling. It has instead everything to do with helping and informing. And it's exactly the same when it comes to building your personal brand. So don't think selling, instead think helping, providing a solution, educating. That's really what building a personal brand is all about. And this is inbound marketing, which attracts customers and opportunities in terms of the job market to us when people are ready to buy, or in the case of the job market, hire. And think about your last major purchase. Was it an outbound? Was it an advert you responded to, or was it more about an inbound marketing message that got your attention? Did the supplier of what it is you decided to buy, did they build a relationship with you along the way? I suspect if you look at some of your higher purchase items that you've bought, they probably developed a relationship, because that's what brands are doing increasingly nowadays. And building a personal brand, a career brand for life, is very much a lesson in inbound marketing. So whether internal to your current organization for promotion opportunities, or external to the company you work for in search of new career opportunities, it starts with being helpful, interesting, and engaging. And as I said earlier, having an opinion. But many people find this uncomfortable. They find it uncomfortable because they think it's selling. It's not. If you've not done this before, you're going to find this uncomfortable. It's a step out of the comfort zone, which I define as the people you know, the places you go, and the things you're used to doing. So the people you currently know, the places you currently go, and the things you're currently used to doing. So if you're not currently on LinkedIn, that could be an uncomfortable place to be. It's just about investing some time to get used to it. Talk about LinkedIn in a moment. And then start to use the platform for what it's there to do, to build relationships. And building a personal brand is often a venture in engaging with people you don't yet know, in new places and on new platforms. So you're definitely out of your comfort zone. And if you've never done it before, it's also something you've probably not been used to doing. And if you package these three unknowns together, then it's no surprise that people never get started in building a personal brand. And they don't get started, and that's often to the detriment of their future success. And remember, a personal brand, it's personal. And for many, there is a natural fear of putting themselves out there. And fear is one of the biggest hurdles we face in life. And but beyond fear, you have to realize that often the best opportunities exist. And for me, I should say, fear is a major clue as to where I should be headed next. I use it as my guiding light, if you like. If I'm slightly scared to do something, that's probably something I should be doing within reason, of course. And it's an indication to me that I'm on the periphery of my comfort zone, and I'm about to learn something new, develop a new skill, or uncover something to take my career to the next level. And to bring this assertion to life, let me just share with you I said I like stories. Let me share with you a quick personal story about conquering fear in pursuit of building a personal brand. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I was absolutely terrified of public speaking. They say public speaking is the thing people fear the most. I was absolutely terrified. I would avoid it at all costs. And as such, I missed out on a multitude of opportunities to promote my personal brand and message. And I would get asked, would you come and talk at this event? And I always make an excuse. I couldn't do it. I couldn't stand in front of an audience, whether that be face-to-face, that's obviously more difficult in a room, or online. But I decided that enough was enough, and I made a decision to get help in the form of a public speaking coach. And I put what he taught me into practice and persisted, even though in the beginning there were a few bumps in the road in the form of some very, very shaky performances. But by persevering and staying outside of my comfort zone for long enough, that's the important point. You have to stay outside of your comfort zone for long enough. I slowly improved. And when an opportunity to do an 8-minute stand-up comedy set Another thing people fear, in front of 350 people came along, I took it without hesitation. And I have to admit, I wasn't very funny. I didn't win the competition, but that's not what it was about for me. It was about getting comfortable doing something uncomfortable to grow. And public speaking now gives me a regular opportunity to communicate my message, my personal brand, either on stage or as I'm doing now on this webinar. So if putting your message out there seems uncomfortable in the first instance, that's to be expected, but please don't let it stop you. This is what a personal brand is all about. Confidence comes from action and the practice of doing. And while communicating your personal brand may be a new action for you, by persevering and being consistent, that word consistent again, it can and will become a natural part of who you are. Okay, so let's talk about LinkedIn. In recent years, there's been one huge game changer that has enabled anyone to promote their personal brand and unique message to anyone they choose, wherever they're based. And this, of course, is social media. And when it comes to successful executive job search, what I'm primarily talking about here is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the business professional platform. And quick question for you. Quick question. How many of you on the webinar tonight are on LinkedIn? How many of you are on LinkedIn, have an active LinkedIn profile? There's a slight delay, so I'll just wait for a few people to type in. People saying, Christopher's saying, I'm not on LinkedIn. Okay. A few people are saying, yes, I'm on LinkedIn. Petergay saying, sadly, I don't. So it's probably about 50-50. Some of you on LinkedIn. Somebody's saying on LinkedIn but not active. So let me ask you the second question. So if you are on LinkedIn, are you communicating on LinkedIn on a daily basis? Are you interacting on LinkedIn on a daily basis to communicate your personal brand? Just let me know if you're being proactive on LinkedIn. So some people are saying not quite sure what to do. Some people are saying a little bit. Phil, thank you, Phil. Yes, waiting for your acceptance. I'll accept, Phil, once I jump off the webinar. This is live, but if you've connected to me, I'll jump off and I'll connect with you afterwards. Yeah, Chris is saying not being proactive enough. A lot of comments coming in. So again, there's a mixed bag, I think, of people being either kind of quite passive, but knowing that they probably need to be more proactive. And what I can tell you as a former professional recruiter is that employers are now going to LinkedIn directly to find talent for their organizations, often before advertising positions or placing them with executive recruiters. Prior to LinkedIn, employers, when it was time to hire, would ask their networks. They consult their networks. Any of you who've consumed any of my content, I call it Conversations 1 and 2. And they say, who do you know? Who can you recommend? Because we all wanted a trusted recommendation. But this line of inquiry prior to LinkedIn would often quickly dry up. And back then, if you needed to hire somebody, you needed to find somebody with a database to find the right person. And that's why the recruitment industry thrived. But now everybody has access to a real-time database, which is always up to date because the individuals own their profiles. So a traditional recruitment database would always be out of date. But on LinkedIn, of course, you keep your profile up to date yourself. So it's the best database in the world. And people have an incentive to keep their profiles up to date because it's part of their personal brand. It's what they're communicating about themselves. So if you've got no presence on LinkedIn and are not capitalizing on the opportunity to communicate your personal brand through the platform, you could, and this is important, you could be missing out on a multitude of opportunities that exist before ever being placed in the public domain. And when I say public domain, I mean an employer going out to executive job boards or professional recruiters. And this place that exists before the public domain is the place I call the hidden market. And the hidden market is really where employers like to hire. It can be quicker. There's less risk because generally people are recommended, and there's less cost, of course, because there's not an advertisement fee or a recruitment fee to pay. So LinkedIn is where absolutely you need to be. So if you embrace LinkedIn and choose to communicate your personal brand message consistently, inbound career opportunities are very likely to find you when you least expect it. But you have to do this consistently. And as we've established, some of you have got a LinkedIn profile, but may not be using it proactively. And you may have what I call an attractive shop window, which is your profile. You may have optimized that well. And that's important, but it's a little bit like driving a Ferrari in first gear unless you're using the platform as a proactive engagement tool. So you're working the platform to engage with the people you want to engage with, to get your personal brand out in front of them. And the good news is, to use the Ferrari analogy, there are a multitude of ways to climb up the gears to make your LinkedIn profile work harder for you. And I'm going to share these. I'm going to share 3 of these with you now. And some of these you may be familiar with, some you may not be. There's a whole host of stuff you can do on LinkedIn, but what I've done here is pick out some of the 3 things that can help you create inbound career opportunities. So what I'm going to do now is just pull up my LinkedIn profile, which you can see up here. What I'm going to do down here is just drop down to see all activity, and I'm going to get into this in a moment, but this is an important part. The first thing to say, though, is that connections on LinkedIn are everything. And I alluded to this at the start of the presentation. I've got about 9,500. What LinkedIn, it tells people whether you've got 500 plus. If you've got less than 500, it will tell me what that number is. Absolutely, you have to get above 500. And the clue is as to how many connections somebody's got. If you go down to followers, somebody can follow you without being connected to you. So you'll see here I've got about 9,500 connections. And connectivity on LinkedIn is important because the more people you're connected with, the more people you can see, and in reverse, they can see you. So you have more reach and visibility. And having a personal brand is about having reach and visibility. You could have the best personal brand, but unless you've got reach and visibility, then it can be very, very difficult to get that out in front of who you want to get that out in front of. And there is a balance on LinkedIn between quantity. You need the right, a decent number of connections, and quality. And if you can have quantity and quality, and what I mean by quality is connecting with people of the right level in the right sector, the sector you operate in, then you've really got a very, very powerful profile. And in the first instance, my advice is to build that number up to 500 plus, but then very much think about the quality of your connections. So see all activity down here. This is my activity on LinkedIn. You can see there are posts, there are articles, and then there is all activity. Let me talk about posts first of all. And posts used to be called status updates, and these are a great way to communicate a consistent message to your connections. And this is through sharing relevant content via posts that will gain your attention. And often this is curated content. And this is essentially taking someone else's content, a news article you've seen, something pertinent to your sector, adding your opinion here in the narrative and then sharing it. And of course, when you share this, it pops up in your first connections feed. So they're reminded of you, and they may just read the content and engage with you further. And you can see here, top of the tree, I've been doing this to promote this webinar, and I've also been using some automation tools. You'll see that I post quite regularly if you're connected to me on LinkedIn, and there's some automation stuff which is a little bit more advanced that you can use to start to share content on a regular basis. And the way that you post your content is you go in here and you type away. You can share URL links. You have the opportunity here to connect your Twitter account. Obviously, you're restricted by the number of characters on Twitter, and you can share this on a regular basis. You can do this manually, and you can set some automation as well, but that's a little bit more advanced perhaps for another day. And then if you look at here, LinkedIn, let me go back over here, go down here. LinkedIn gives you the opportunity to publish articles, and this is original content you create. And as such, it's my belief that this has more attention-grabbing value, but of course it takes a lot longer to produce. This is my latest post that I wrote. As you can see, it's some long-form content, a bit like a blog post on a website. And what I do here, I speak into people's problems, challenges, aspirations. Hopefully they read the content and then they get in touch with me. And I get most of my clients from communicating on LinkedIn because I know they're there. I know who I'm looking to engage with. And if you think about this, LinkedIn gives you the opportunity to create articles. So you should take it and you should put those articles in there on a regular basis, and they sit at the top of your profile, which tells you that they're important. It's a great clue that they're an important part of your personal brand on the platform. And as I've said, in terms of the content I produce, think about the problems or opportunities in your sector and communicate your knowledge and experience and opinion in a helpful, interesting, and engaging way. And when I work with my private one-to-one coaching clients, executive clients, one of the things I get them to do as part of their 3-month coaching program is to write a LinkedIn post, write a LinkedIn article. And for many, it's a really difficult thing to do. They're really experienced people in what they do, but putting themselves out there to create content can be quite difficult. They're not sure what to write, what to do. They're worried about what the reaction may be. But once they've done it, they've broken through the periphery of their comfort zone. And generally, in fact, well, not generally, pretty much all of the time, they get a really, really good response. Every now and again, you get a couple of negative comments. That's just part and parcel of life. But they get a good response, and it increases their reach and visibility. And your connections will see that in your feed. And you also have the opportunity, and let me just show you this, to take your long-form content or any other content, copy the URL, and then you have the opportunity to find groups. And groups, for me, are the real power on LinkedIn. But groups are the things people get very confused about. So if I jump into the search engine here on LinkedIn, I can filter on groups. And as you can see, I can search on all sorts of groups on whatever it is I want. My subject area, my profession, whatever it is, it is. And this is one of the groups that I'm in, the CFO network. And what you can do in groups is, once you're a member, you have to be approved as a member. You can share your content. There we go. You share your content. Subject line is better to do there, and then share it here in the body of the post. And then you share that with the group members. It's great because look at this group, 367,000 members. Very, very powerful indeed. But my advice in groups, first off, is to look at what people are talking about. Like and comment on other people's posts. Get a feel for the temperature. A bit like going into a networking event. You don't go in there and shout your message. You go in there and listen to what the conversation is, and then you start to engage in that conversation. It's a really great way, liking, commenting, and sharing people's content, and then positioning your own content to build a relationship in a particular target audience. One of the things you can do is, if you click on this button here, I'm just going to stop that post, then you can go in and see who the admins are of the group. And you can message them. You don't need to be connected to people in LinkedIn to message them. So on LinkedIn, there are first, second, and third tier connections, but also group connections. And joining a group means I have a special type of group connection with this 360, however many thousand people are in this group. And you can message the group manager and say, hey, just new to the group. Is there any content that would be useful for me to share? And you never know, David or Kimberly or Patty may just take hold of your content and actually share it far and wide in a group email or something like that, which really helps to exponentially increase your reach. And as a recruiter, as a former recruiter, I would always engage in groups. And a number of years back, I always remember this story. I was asked to recruit a senior IT auditor by one of my PLC clients, and I didn't have any on my database. Very, very hard to find these kind of people with these kind of skills. I went onto LinkedIn. I joined a LinkedIn group for IT audits, and I posted a message in there, and I had 5 responses of individuals' names that could be relevant for this position. And one of the people who was identified, I messaged through LinkedIn, connected to him on LinkedIn, and ultimately he went through a recruitment process, was offered the job, and if he'd not been on LinkedIn and active in groups, he might not be where he is today. So LinkedIn is very, very important. Other important areas on LinkedIn, which is more to do with the shop window stuff, is, if I go to my profile here, is this stuff at the top. You've got your banner, your photo, your headline. This is one of the first things people see, and then your summary. This is more about dressing your shop window, which I mentioned earlier. And we don't have time to discuss that. We're talking more about the personal branding stuff on this webinar. But I go into a really deep dive on LinkedIn and pull up my profile and share a load of content and videos in something called Executive Edge Online, which I'm going to talk to you about shortly and give you the opportunity to access. So let me just shut this down. We'll get back to the slides, and let's talk about the hire cycle. And think about the world we live in now. It's a world where we expect instant gratification. We want fast results, don't we? And we've come to expect fast results. And technology has been a major catalyst to our increasing demand for speed, and more speed. And in the executive job market, The kind of example here is, okay, here's my CV. See my CV and hire me. I'll send my CV, and I want to be hired. But that doesn't necessarily work that well at all. And what you have to remember here is that building a personal brand takes time, and it's not about see me, hire me. What it really is about is see me, like me, trust me, and then across to hire me. So it's a longer journey, and building a personal brand takes time, and it takes time to see the fruits of your labor. But those fruits often lead to high probability executive opportunities that haven't made it to the public domain because everyone's on LinkedIn looking for talent. And this means having opened the door through building a personal brand, you're often only in competition with yourself, which increases the probability of ultimately being hired. So instead of see me, hire me, or promote me if you're looking to advance your career in your existing organization, it should be see me, like me, trust me, hire me. And that really is what a personal brand is all about. It's about building trust. And developing a personal brand, of course, is about getting clear on who you're trying to reach. That's your audience, communicating a relevant message which resonates, and then doing it consistently over time. And let me share with you a real life example. I like to share examples and stories because it brings things to life. And this is an example that really pulls together everything that I've spoken about so far. And I practice what I preach. And through my business Career Codex, I have embraced the power of communicating a personal brand. And it was difficult for me at the start, but now I do it on a regular basis. Do it through my website, LinkedIn profile, in addition to public speaking and online events. And I know who my target audience is. I don't know them individually when they're a target, but I know who they are. I can define them. And I get ideas for my content by listening to this audience, to their questions and to challenges. And I get a lot of that from the LinkedIn groups that I'm in. And the power of a personal brand really hit home to me last year when I secured a new senior executive client based in the USA. And Jeff had searched online for a solution to his challenges in the executive job market, which had led him to read a number of my blog posts and watch some of my videos on YouTube. He then bought my book on Amazon, I think, and read it cover to cover before reaching out to me via LinkedIn. And when he eventually approached me directly, which was after a few months of consuming my message, see me, like me, trust me, hire me. That's what it was about. He consumed my message. He saw my message. He liked what I was saying. He started to trust me. And then when it was time to hire me, he approached me to do just that. And I started coaching him. We worked together for a period of 3 months. But the point is this. I knew who I was trying to reach, but I didn't know Jeff personally at that point. But I was putting content out that would resonate with my target audience. So I showed him how to create his personal brand to captivate his target audience. And within 10 weeks, he had an offer to make an executive transition into a new sector. And what was interesting is when I asked him if he'd considered hiring anyone else to help him, after all, I'm based in the UK, he's in the States, his answer was no. Such was the strength of the relationship that I built through my personal brand. So the power of building my personal brand led him to me in the first place, and then building his own personal brand helped him to find and secure a new executive position that was never advertised. Okay, I'm going to take some questions shortly, but have a think about your questions, please. Pop them in the question box if you would like to, just to avoid any time delay. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share with you something called Executive Edge Online. And this is an exclusive opportunity for ICA members or anyone else on this webinar. Executive Edge Online is something that really consolidates my knowledge and experience from the recruitment sector, and also working with my executive clients from across the world to help them take proactive control of their executive job searches to find opportunities in the hidden market that aren't necessarily advertised. It's based on real life experience. It's a proven system for success. And as I mentioned, I think I mentioned earlier, it's all in one place. The system I talked about at the start of the webinar, this is the system. It's all in one place, and you have absolute access to it whenever you wish. And what I'm going to do now, as I just talk through what this is, I'm going to let's move that over. I'm going to just share that in the question box in the chat box, so you've got that if you want to go and take a look. And I'm going to explain what that is absolutely all about. So, Executive Edge Online. It's essentially an online program that comprises over 150 videos, downloads, exercises, accessible 24/7, gives you the complete step-by-step system to take proactive control of your career and your future, and access to opportunities in the hidden markets. It's based on practical advice, real-life experience, and you can fit around your existing job. If you're currently working, you can consume this whenever you want, and you can jump forward. For example, in the program, there is an interview section. There's over 20 videos that shows you how to prepare, execute with confidence at interview, and follow up like never before. And I'm continually updating this content. LinkedIn makes changes from time to time. They've just brought out something called active status, for example, and there's 20 videos in there that show you exactly how to build your shop window and to use LinkedIn proactively to build your personal brand. In addition to the 24/7 content, accessible 24/7, there are group coaching calls on a fortnightly basis. And the idea is you consume the content, you then jump on the group coaching calls, and you have the opportunity to ask questions specific to your situation in a confidential environment. So this is ongoing mentoring and invaluable feedback to things that are happening to you as you start to charter your own ship. And you'll receive this ongoing support while you're subscribed to the program. And even if you can't turn up to one of these calls live, you can ask questions in advance, and the recording is always made available in the platform afterwards. There is also a private LinkedIn group. I've explained that LinkedIn is important. So in addition to the 24/7 accessible content, the group coaching calls, there is a private LinkedIn group. And this is your opportunity to consume additional content that I share only with the group, to get feedback from the group, to get support in between the fortnightly group coaching calls. And there is a combination of people in the group who are people currently going through the program, and also Executive Edge alumni. And one of the big challenges for people in the executive job market is that they feel alone. Well, in this group, in this program, through the group coaching calls, you're no longer alone. You have a supportive community, and you realize you're not alone. And we all learn from one another. And I'm there to orchestrate that. So as a special thank you, I wanted to make this offer to you at the end. I'd like to give you the opportunity to start in Executive Edge Online. And this is the program that will put you in proactive control of your career and future, help you define, find, and secure the opportunity you really want, not just the one you've seen advertised or had presented to you by an executive search firm, and gives you the keys to the hidden market. And if you go to the link that I've shared in the box, then what you can do is you can access that. If you use coupon code BRANDWEBINAR, that will give you the opportunity to take 50% off your first month subscription. And it runs on a subscription basis. You can cancel at any time, so you can join for 1 month. That's absolutely fine. And you can cancel directly in the platform. And if you go to the page that I've shared, the link in the chat box, then you'll be able to enter that and get started right away. So let me just show you how that works. So what happens here? If you go to the landing page and click on Get Started, you fill in your details. You can even sign in with LinkedIn. You create a username and password. Agree to the terms of service. You go over here, you can click have a coupon, you go over to here, you enter your coupon or discount code. Then the important bit is to hit apply, and then of course you hit purchase. And you can come in for a month for half the regular subscription cost, or you can stay as long as you want to get support in your executive job search along the way. So that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about, and I'm very, very happy now to take any questions that people have. And let me just have a look. If you've got questions for me, let's have a look. Yes, there are a few questions coming in, and there's quite a few. What I'll do, if there's too many questions for me to get through in the next sort of 5-10 minutes, what I'll do is put a blog post together, and I'll make sure that that's shared with everybody who turned up to the webinar. Okay, so okay, so Petegay said, how do you rebrand and how challenging can it be? Rebranding, you can rebrand to whatever it is you want. And I guess what you may be talking about here is a career transition. There is either a move in your current discipline and sector, or you can transition to something completely different. how you define your audience and how you define your message is everything. And if you define your audience properly and your message backs it up, then you can transition to a different sector. Jeff, who I talked about earlier, he moved from a public sector environment into a private sector organization. He moved from a very large organization to a small organization. He got very focused. He got clear on his audience. He got clear on what message would resonate with his audience, and it opened up opportunities for him that weren't advertised in the public domain. What have we got here? Okay. How do you get through to those who won't accept you on LinkedIn because they don't know you? Okay. Susan's asked this question. Great question, Susan. What I would say on that is this. Quite a lot of people on LinkedIn are happy to connect with people. People who understand LinkedIn are happy to connect with people they don't know. Occasionally, people don't connect back to you. That could be for one of two reasons. Either they don't know you or they're just not active on the platform. Don't take it personally. There are always other people that you can go and connect to. Groups are a great way, because you don't need to be connected to get in contact with somebody or to raise your profile in front of a certain type of decision maker. Some people won't accept, some people will accept. But, if you are communicating status updates or posts, as they're now called, articles, if you're using your feed and, the second tier connections, your first tier connections are sharing that with their connections, even if the person you're trying to connect to is not connecting back, there is a probability they'll see some of your content if one of your first tier connections has shared your content. Okay, Phil has asked about Executive Edge Online. Is it free to ICA members? I'm afraid it's not free. I believe that, there is tremendous value. I think I know this content because I created it. It's tremendously comprehensive. And what I've done with agreement with ICA is I've extended an offer that your first month subscription will be half price. So the regular subscription is £99 per month. You can come in for a month at half price using that coupon code. Quite a few people stay for 2, 3, 4 months. But if you want to come in for a month, get through the content really, really quickly, come on a couple of group coaching calls to see if you like it. The idea behind the 50% off for ICA members and anyone on this webinar is that you get to try the program and try the content at a low investment value. But I believe you have to make an investment, otherwise you might never consume any of it. So that's why it's priced as it is. Okay, Charlotte says, should I still have a comprehensive CV as well as a LinkedIn profile? Yes, you should, Charlotte. But your CV is not that important. Your CV or resume is not that important. And what is more important, and I talk about this in Executive Edge Online, is your approach. Because most people are putting their CV out there in application to opportunities they can see, okay, or in front of executive recruiters. And it doesn't work because that's what everybody else is doing. So your approach is about doing things differently. And in actual fact, in your initial approach, you don't necessarily need to include a CV. Your LinkedIn profile, I believe nowadays, through my experience, is more important than your CV because I've got instantaneous access to it. And I've got access to it whether you send me your CV or not. And it's a living, breathing document, particularly if you use it proactively, which I explain more about in Executive Edge Online. Okay, great questions. Thank you for all of these questions. I'm gonna stick around and get through these. Okay, to build a good Roberto said, to build a good reputation should be from experience and not from preconceived ideas. Yeah, I mean, your experience is everything. And people are going to look at your skills and experience on LinkedIn, on your CV, whatever else. But, to move in the job market and to move in the executive job market, you've got to decide where you're headed and you have to grow into a role. There is very little point-taking position that you can do standing on your head. And while your experience is important to date, what you're going to learn and develop in a new role is just as important. And you got to grow into the shoes, grow into that new position. Or what would be the point of taking that position? People do have preconceived ideas. Happens all the time in the recruitment industry. Happens all the time. One of the things I talk about, for example, in the interview section of the Executive Edge Online program, is your experience at interview may have been that the interviewer talks at you and you don't really have the opportunity to communicate what it is you need to communicate to get hired or offered the position. And that's often because the interviewer is nervous, isn't prepared. And what I show you there is a strategy. It's called the higher baseline strategy, 90-day plan strategy, that you position your experience to alleviate some of the perceptions that people will naturally walk away with unless you proactively, and it's that word again, proactively communicate what you need to communicate. I can't see the link in my view of the chat box. Okay, Olo, what you're going to get, you're going to get an email shortly. Anyway, so if you can't see it in the chat box, you're going to get the link shortly in your inbox. Just check, that should be firing out any minute now. Just have a check in your spam folder just in case. You'll have an email from me. It will have a link. It will have all of the sign up details if you want to get started, and you'll find it in there. I'll share it again just to share. So it's sharing with the entire audience. So that should be coming through. Okay, a couple more questions. Okay, so Daniel's put a question in here, and sorry if I'm not getting around to all of your questions here. What I will do is make sure I put some content together that I'll share with all of you that will come back to you on those. Most of the answers to what you're talking about is in Executive Edge Online anyway. So Daniel's saying, to revert back, how should the details on your LinkedIn profile differ to that on your CV? Okay, so on your LinkedIn profile, you've got a lot more opportunity to express what's on your CV. And what I mean by that is you have a photo, you've got your brand headline, you have the opportunity to share articles and content. It's a living, breathing document that is active on a regular basis if you're using it proactively. So while some of the content will be similar, of course, and your focus on your CV, resume, and LinkedIn should be all about achievements, so the value that you've added. LinkedIn is a little bit like it's kind of the heartbeat of you and your personal brand, because it's online, it's there when people want to access it whenever they want to, and if you're using it proactively, it's much more than the CV, because your content is being put in front of the right people if you're using it proactively, which of course your CV never can do. It's a living, breathing document. Okay, so Chris has said, good question. If we sign up for the first month at 50%, would we need to cancel if we don't wish to continue, or are we prompted at the end of the month to pay for month 2? So it's an automatic renewal. Chris, the best thing I would say to you is this: is if you sign up and you want to stay for a month, sign up, pay the first month's fee, and put a note in your diary. And then a couple of days before the end of the month, just cancel it. If you forget and you realize, well, actually, providing it's only a couple of days after the end of the month or the start of the new month, and you let me know, I can reverse that for you. But you have the facility to do that. If you cancel in your first month at any time, you will still have access until the end of the first month to the period that you've paid. But a month may be enough for you. You might decide it's a little bit longer. There's a lot of content in there, as you'll have seen. So let me have a look, see if there's other questions. We're nearly out of time. I'm going to hang on for a couple more minutes, and then I'll get hold of the questions at the end and put some content together. Okay, let me have a look. Okay, this is a good question. Christopher says, my main concern re LinkedIn is fraud, as well as negative publicity, where people may try to badmouth you to provide negative publicity, which can be equally as destructive as the tool can be constructive. How secure is LinkedIn, and can you lock it down? Okay, well, you have privacy settings on LinkedIn. You've got privacy settings as to who can see your connections and various other things. I'll talk about this in Executive Edge Online. But it is a website, and you want it to be visible to people you don't necessarily know. I have used LinkedIn for a long time, and you don't really tend to get the kind of negative stuff that you get on Twitter and Facebook, because it's a professional platform and people on the platform are professional. And when I have seen negative comments or whatever else, what you tend to find is, because people want it to be a professional platform, other people jump on it and recognize it for what it is, and it goes quiet. So, even if you do get a negative comment, it's generally communicated in a professional way. I've used LinkedIn really since it started, and I've never really had a problem. Twitter is something different altogether. Facebook is something different altogether. But, I would say the risk of a negative comment and not being on the platform is probably more destructive than not actually taking the opportunity to communicate your personal brand. Okay. So a few people are having to drop off now. So what I'll do, I will say a big thank you Got a few thank yous just to say. Big thank you to all of you, first off, for attending this webinar. You've taken time out from your day, if you're somewhere else in the world outside of the UK, or your evening if you're in the UK or Europe, and I really, really appreciate it. If you decide to come into Executive Edge Online, fantastic. If not, then I wish you well for the future, and please feel free to consume some of my content by connecting to me on LinkedIn. I'm going to get an email out to you. Please check your spam folder. I'll get an email out to you probably in a couple of days as well. I've got another article that I'm going to share with you. And I want to say big thank you. Thank you to ICA, International Compliance Association. Great membership organization. I'm not a member of ICA. It's not my sector, but my experience of working with ICA has been fantastic. Done a great job in promoting this webinar, and I hope we'll follow up afterwards, depending on the feedback. I hope they have a similar opportunity to do something again. So, been a real pleasure to communicate my message. Thank you for allowing me to do that. I hope to see some of you, if not all of you, inside Executive Edge Online and on the next group coaching call. But until next time, take care, and I hope to have the opportunity to speak to you again very, very soon.